Our book tonight, Braiding Sweetgrass, is a New York Times best-selling nonfiction book published in 2013 about the role of Indigenous knowledge as an alternative or complementary approach to Western mainstream scientific methodologies. It was written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a Potawatomi botanist, author, and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment at the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Joining us tonight to discuss the book is Kawaipuna Kalipe, the managing director of the Molokai Heritage Trust. Puna brings deep cultural grounding, community connection, and a steadfast commitment to protecting what makes Molokai Molokai. Puna's leadership is rooted in the understanding that the relationship between Aina and Kanaka, land and humans, is inseparable. She previously served as the land bank manager for Sustainable Molokai, helping guide the community-led effort to return lands to local stewardship, an initiative that resulted in the formation of the Molokai Heritage Trust. Today, she continues to steward this vision, ensuring that the voices, values, and knowledge of the Molokai community remain at the heart of the decision-making for the generations to come. So we'll get her spotlighted. I think you have to stop sharing your screen. Yeah, there we go. All right, so welcome, Puna, and tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
What you do.
Hi, aloha nui, everyone. I'm a little excited, so please, if I talk quickly, tell me to slow down in the chat. I'll do my best to speak clearly and articulately. But aloha nui kako. He kama ke ia o na aina aloha o Molokai, mai na kumuku puna o halawa, a I ka wela o ka la I ka lua koi. Aloha nui kako. My name is Kawaipuna Kalipe, Puna for short, and Molokai is my home. In the chat or by reaction, however you can signal, please respond if you've heard the phrase land back before. I see some shakes. I see some hearts, some responses in the chat. Awesome. Yeah. So the term land back can be a liberating phrase for some, but also a really intimidating phrase for others. And I want to acknowledge that both are normal reactions. Phrases like this often elicit emotions and reminders of historical injustices that are complicated and layered. So before we get into discussions, I'd like us all to try to reinterpret that phrase through an Indigenous understanding of land using Kimmerer's text while I share a quick story about our community and what we're up to. So, like I said, I'm from Molokai. It's the 5th largest island in Hawaii's archipelago at a whopping 38 miles long by 10 miles at its widest point, and is home to the highest sea cliffs in the world and the longest continuous fringing reefs in the entire US. So to us, land back, or as we say, aina back, isn't about kicking people off of the island or being exclusive. It's not even necessarily anti-development. To us, aina back means returning to a regenerative relationship between community and land that creates abundance. We see every day in the news how nature's abundance has been denied to so many of us in so many places. But on Molokai, we've protected it for generations. What does it look like, you ask? Thriving ecosystems that include secure sources of drinking water, secure sources of food, and secure sources of housing. It's hunting, fishing, diving, gathering, and being in Aina, being in the land daily, and sharing whatever crops, meat, or fish, whatever you had extra with your neighbors, sharing your time, picking up your neighbors' kids, being in community. Today, we're doing just that. We're aiming to buy back 55,000 acres of land. That's more than a third of our island. We know this won't be easy, and we know we have a lot to learn, but we also know something else. It'll be worth it. Right now, those lands are held by Molokai Ranch. For generations, various ranch owners have tried to develop it in different ways. And for generations, our communities played defense, putting Aina, land, and community first, to keep Molokai. But in 2006, the ranch came to us with an offer. Let us develop the West End into luxury vacation spots, and we'll give you 20,000 acres back. 20,000 acres. It was the best deal we'd ever been offered. Anybody in Hawaii had ever been offered to get 20,000 acres of land back. And this was in 2007. And some people, good, honest Molokai people like my mom, thought we should take it. But others, good, honest Molokai people like my dad, saw it as too steep a price to pay. So much so that time period in my life, I was 8 or 9, was really tense in our family. My parents almost got a divorce at that time because that's how much it mattered. That's how much this island matters to us. And those were the stakes that my parents understood. It was a classic divide and conquer play, because this time when our community rallied to play defense, it wasn't against the ranch, it was against each other. And even when enough people united to block this development, it came at a steep cost. In retaliation, the ranch laid off more than 100 workers. On a small island like ours and a small community like ours, that was 10% of our entire island's workforce, and all but abandoned the land. It decimated our economy, devastated our aina, and worst of all, drove a bigger wedge between our people. Don't blame us, the ranch said. Blame the protesters. In other words, blame your friends, blame your neighbors, blame your ohana, your families. And for a long time, we did. Cousins who grew up as siblings stopped talking. Grocery stores that were bustling and always full of energy were silent. It was hard to know who you could trust because you weren't sure where people fell on the issue, because it was that much of a divide in the community. Then 10 years later, an opportunity emerged. The mostly deserted ranch put itself up for sale. And in response, our community made a choice. We focused on the most important thing first, fixing us. We were used to fighting against bad actors, but now we were being challenged to do something different. So we did what we knew how to do, and we planned the march. So at the Molokai Puleo'o Unity March, people from both sides of the ranch's divide showed up with a single purpose: to start healing together. The march set us on a path to a new future, uniting our community around a big, bold idea: buying back Molokai lands and stewarding them in a way that is pono for Aina and Kanaka alike, for land and people. Thanks to those who came before us, our generation gets to play offense, not defense. So that's what we're doing. In the last 4 years, we set the stage for the next act in our generation fight for land back. We held over 100 in-person and online meetings. It's actually closer to 300 by now. Visiting every district on our island and calling in all stakeholders. We invited everyone with ideas to offer, from generational families to newcomers. We listened deeply and kept talking until we reached consensus on the big idea: creating a vehicle, the Molokai Heritage Trust, that would allow us, the Molokai community, to own our lands and control our destiny. The trust is a member-managed nonprofit governed by and for our community to keep us united behind a really, really simple idea: keep Molokai Molokai. The community voted in the first board of directors in August of 2024, and we already have the chance to make good on the community's core vision of acquiring and restoring Aina. We are buying 900 acres of land in Wailau Valley, one of our island's most pristine and culturally significant places, and recovering that aina, recovering that land, and letting our community decide how best to malama and restore it, build on this legacy while helping today's community strengthen our capacity around place-based collective decision-making. We're already learning so much from this first transaction, and we're not stopping here. We're gearing up for our chance at buying Molokai Ranch, preparing our organization and community to seize the moment when it comes. Molokai and her people like my parents, my grandparents, and generations before, and generations to come, have already done their part. They kept Molokai, and they did it when no one was here to help them. Now it's our turn, and we're gonna do what they did and make it a little easier for the next generation to succeed too. And we'll need all the help we can get. I welcome you to visit our website, molokaiheritagetrust.org, to learn more about the work and subscribe to us to receive updates. We're gonna need your financial support, your network, and your participation in Aloha Aina so we can bring the themes in this book to life with each of you. Mahalo nui.
Amazing. That was really great because when you first started talking about it, I was like, okay, so what are the threats? Because it sounds beautiful there. And then you started talking about the ranchers. Are they still a threat? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so the biggest threat actually to our community isn't development, because developers know that the only way to develop on our island is with community consent. Like
Hmm.
we've held the line that much.
Good.
It's actually inaction that we're fighting against. So if we don't do anything to restore the aina, restore the land, the longest contingent reef in the US will be under topsoil because of all of the erosion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's more, we will lose our ability to sustain ourselves. We will lose our natural resources with inaction. So our community is really being drawn not just for our future, not just for a future that we want, but also for a future that we don't want for our kids.
Gotcha. So, in the book, the author describes how she teaches her classes, the ways that she does things, such as giving the students an opportunity to see more than just scientific names, but to really see and respect the forest. Do you feel that there should be more of this type of teaching? Do you think it would help people understand, like what you advocate for? Is this kind of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the cool thing I think, or the fun connection with Kimmer, or the author, and our community is that she works closely with a university professor at the University of Michigan. They're both from the same tribe, the Potawatomi.
Mm,
So we work closely with the University of Michigan to bring over research students and support them in like learning and investing in these ways of understanding. So absolutely, I think if we're to make our way out of the current systems, we have to start being really creative in how we understand how we are in relations to each other, um, as well as in relations to this land. I think there's great opportunities to um, dive into education and through university systems, but more so within communities. Like every community has their knowledge base, and I think reaching out to in places where your community still stores that knowledge is a great start.
so, what else do you think that we should change to make the world better for future generations, for our families?
Yeah, I think Kimmerer does a really great job in the text of explaining how the systems that we are currently under make it hard as individuals to um, make collective decisions.
Hmm.
So I think a large part of how are we going to, like shift away from the current future that we're we're steamrolling towards. It's I don't see it as a very shiny future. But I also know that possibility lives within everyone. And to like shift those futures will take everybody to like work as a collective. The I and I'll give you folks an example within our community. Like our the how I, you know, talk about our community meetings, like paints this like really beautiful picture, I'm sure, of people that get along together. And that's really not the case. Like we're, you know, like we're like any other community that is passionate and like screams at each other, yells at each other, and is upset with each other. But at the end of the day, like two people in our community, two people screaming at each other will still offer the other person a ride home if needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the part of our society that we've often been afraid to lean into. Is it that like in those friction points, in the uncomfortableness of those conversations, but those uncomfortable conversations is where we'll find the humanity in each other again. And that's, I believe, is the starting point, is the healing of each other, so that we can find the possibilities in each other again. Because for our community, we're only as strong as our community's unity. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that across communities.
Well, and you brought up, you know, being a collectivism. I'm thinking versus individualism, which is what we Westerners mostly practice. So your community is still, you know, doing that collectivism piece, and that's really kind of cool to see. Um, this book had me reflecting on so many things, like how I treat the earth, and could I do a better job personally of recycling, as an example. What are some things that each of us as individuals can start doing, like right now? What should
Yeah.
be what should we be working towards in our local communities?
No, that's a great question. And I will do the really frustrating thing of answering it with a question. Um, but really it comes down to kuleana. It's this Hawaiian word that means both rights and responsibilities.
Mhm.
So what is I so for each of us, let's reassess what is our kuleana. What gifts are we blessed with?
Mhm.
And how are those gifts, how can they be utilized for the collective? What is our responsibility now that we know that these are our gifts? How do we use those to better the collective? So
Mhm.
if you're a writer, meet up with a local group that's doing good work, write an op-ed for them. If if you have a green thumb, garden, grow some local flowers, get some local pollinators in your backyard. Do how you can contribute in any way that you can contribute. One of my board members, on Sundays, she takes her grandkids and her husband and they sweep the town.
Oh.
Do what you can, even if it's just sweeping the town, pick up rubbish.
Mhm.
Like it's those small acts that like start to really inspire people and start to enact change. It may seem tiny, but e- every major discovery starts with a first step.
Mhm.
And that's all we have to, that's really all that's asked of you, is take that first step and then take the next first step and keep going.
I'm gonna look and see. I think we have some questions from the chat that we should probably take a look at before we address our last couple questions. So Pam wants to say, I respectfully acknowledge the Hokoham and Tohono O'odham peoples whose native land I am a visitor on. I recognize the sacred, historical, and enduring relationships that exist between those indigenous peoples and their more than human kin. I honor their wisdom. I understand my ancestors' accountability for their deep pain and loss because of colonization. I strive to learn how to be a better caretaker of the land in a short time I'm here. That's nice. So Lori says, Puna, are there plants and animals on Molokai that are not indigenous to the area?
Oh, Lori, I'm so sorry to report to you. In all of Hawaii, this is a really sad statistic. In all of Hawaii, only 1% of Hawaii's ecosystem remains. Like Hawaii's untapped ecosystem remains. That 1% only exists at the very top of our mountains. So if you ever get the like chance to, if you ever get the honor to come to Hawaii and are invited, then majority of the plants that you see, unless it's being actively managed, are probably invasive. And same for the animals.
Wow.
Our oceans though, are more, there's more, like indigenous animals and ecosystems intact, but where there's been human footprints, you can, yeah, native forests aren't there.
Wow. So Faith asked, how can we learn from indigenous people to respect our environment and not try to control nature?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question because it's I don't think it's us as individuals trying to control nature, right? It's our local governments, it's our state and federal governments that are trying, it's our policies. So really I think a major part of this is advocating that like indigenous knowledge is legitimate knowledge and that these are ways of understanding that should rise to the level of policy, that should rise to the level of research and all those other things. So I think this change has to happen at a systemic level.
On your, I want to ask a question on your island. Does everyone still speak your native, indigenous language, or is that going away like she talked about in the book? That part really bothered me. I think some of the most in the reading.
Yeah. Um, so Hawaii has a similar story with colonization and the loss of language. The Hawaiian language was forced out of schools, and disciplinary action was used if spoken in schools. And it was only I was one of the first classes actually that went through an immersion program. So I speak fluently because I was afforded that education because my parents and my grandparents at that time like really fought for it to be brought back into the school system. So today there's more language speakers, um, but it's not the dominant language by far.
Hmm. So someone says, now my question is perhaps an unanswerable one, but nonetheless, with Americans being such a consumerist society, it's really difficult to feel like you're able to actually put a dent in all of the destruction. And even though the tariffs have caused chaos in the economy, one of my hopes is that with increased prices, we will see a shift in doing more with less. Do you have any suggestions on ways that we can organize locally to encourage this type of community support slash sharing?
I really appreciate the nuance in that question. I also see tariffs as a challenge for the everyday consumer. Um, I think the tariffs actually will help naturally us to shift our understanding of needs and necessities, because as Americans, like Americans are over consumers, and a
Mhm.
part of that is that like the cheap production of the goods that we consume isn't actually free, right? It's coming at the cost of um, whoever's producing it, whatever land is being produced, and this pain is seen um, throughout the global South. In
Mhm.
West Papua, there are massive there's multiple genocides going on because we want cheap technologies.
Mhm.
And this happens kind of everywhere because we want cheap tomatoes.
Mhm.
So I think, or cheap products. So I think what the tariffs are doing is highlighting that these products were never cheap to begin with.
Mhm.
So I think highlighting that, like the human cost of
Mhm.
things, in addition to the
Extremism.
capital cost of things, um, will bring perspective into what we're actually paying for.
Mhm. So Dee asked, are erosion control measures being implemented now on your island? Something that she's trained on that topic. I know we have a lot of it going on up in, I live in Ohio, so in the Great Lakes area, there's a lot of erosion issues as well. So this is, I guess, a worldwide problem.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Climate change is going to be shifting a lot of our landscapes. Um, I in parts of the island, they are doing amazing and really groundbreaking work on erosion control, but you can only do erosion control if the landowner will allow you to do the work. And we've had like 10 years ago, we've had community try to reach out to the landowners and be like, we'll do all of this work for free. Like we just want to put a forest back on our mountain.
Mhm.
And they, they refused. So and the refusal is continued. There is a chance that, like, if it does get to the level of degradation where we only have 1 year, because right now the scientists are telling us we have 5 to 10 years to start to remediate the problem. So if it comes down and the scientists tell us next year you have 1 year left, we might consider condemnation as an avenue to, like, Hail Mary, but we don't want to do that.
Mhm. You want folks to do this of their own will. Um, so Pam asks, could change happen when we humans understand that we are one kin with all above, below, and beside us? It makes me sad that we see ourselves as apart from our more than human kin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a part of um, the systemic issue, is that we often separate ourselves from nature
Mhm.
when we are. Um, and that, like, separation is seen, like, like I've been mentioning, in how we write policies, in how we build our homes, in how, like, in the natural infrastructure of how we exist. We are separating ourselves from nature intentionally. And I think reorienting of who we are, right? Of who, like, as actual beings in this world, will help a lot. I don't know how to tell somebody that, like, you're not different from the dirt, you're not different from the air, you're not different.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that that came to mind from the book was, the respect and the reverence for not just the land, but also the plants and, the trees, the story of the pecan trees. I never knew that until I read that in this book. And I thought, how amazing is that, that they can all talk to one another like that and say, okay, we're all going to bloom now. We're all, or, bud, or we're going to do this. And that, I mean, that's just our simple minds, thinking of it in that way, but just that was just absolutely incredible to think about, and so and how she explains that in the book. And so I was wondering if you had similar, you know, um, philosophies, if you will. That's not really the good word to say, but in
Yeah,
terms of that, but belief systems, if it was similar.
yeah, absolutely. In Hawaii, actually, where our understanding of our relationship to the earth, to the elements around us, is um there. So the elements around us are considered, like, I don't know how to describe it, so I won't. But we we relate to the earth and the more than human beings on the earth as usually older siblings.
Mm,
Uh, and the like, earth and the sky, it's, earth mother and sky father, papa and wakea. These are our parents.
mm,
And we come from these these beings, and just as, you know, we treat our parents with care and respect and understand that relationship, so do we treat the land. And just as
Mhm.
we know that like our parents are there to protect us and feed us, um, so does the land, you know.
Mhm.
And then and all the other elements are born of, you know, of those relations, of land relations. All creatures are born of those relations. Um, so yeah, it is a literal familial relationship that we have with Aina here in Hawaii.
So Jill says, in what ways does Indigenous language communicate about or describe Indigenous flora and fauna differently than non-Indigenous language to encourage restorative management of all creatures, great and small, and natural resources?
Yeah, I think the easiest word for me to like, you know, give that comparison is actually Aina itself. So
Hmm.
Aina is often translated in English as just land. And that translation falls short because there's many ways to say like land in Hawaii. For example, there's Moku, that's an island, or Mokupuni is an island, but Aina is a Mokupuni that's inhabited by people, and it's created when there's that relationship between people and place. So an island without people is just a Mokupuni, but an island with people that is able to provide, you know, food and sustenance is Aina. If you break the word up, I don't know what that's called in English, but you know how like words have smaller words and they come together. So if
Like roots.
yeah, okay, so if you break up the roots of the word Aina, it
Hmm.
means to feed. Ai ana, to feed. So Aina is that relationship between people and land that feeds both people and land.
Okay. Okay. I like that. So, what's next for you in your work to protect the planet?
Yeah, I'm protecting Molokai. That's my kuleana. This community is my kuleana, and I
Hmm.
take it very seriously. So, like I said, we're gonna buy back Molokai Ranch, and I hope you folks are able to witness that. And D, was it? I hope when the time comes, you can give us your erosion control advice.
Yes. um, Jane has asked, what else can we be doing to fight or stop this current administration's attempts to allow our public lands to be sold for logging, mining, and oil and gas and other development? This bill passed today in Congress, and this news needs to be made more prominent to United States citizens. Her husband and she are calling and emailing elected officials daily, protesting weekly with the positive energy of protesters, calling the White House comments line weekly. But what else can be done?
I don't know if this is a the answer that you're going to necessarily like for me, but this is our approach. I'll share our approach is for the next 4 years, we're building in our community. We're building our capacity to, if federal lands go up for sale, we're going to snatch it up, you know, like,
Mhm.
and we're going to protect those lands because we're the yeah, the federal government right now, and you know, for the next 3 years, 4 years, I don't know if we can fully trust that they'll do the right thing. And when it comes to land, when it comes to communities, it's a lot harder to undo harm than it
Mhm.
is to protect.
Mhm.
So for the next 3 years, I would say work with local conservation groups, work with local community housing groups, um, work with like philanthropists to protect as much as we can and to really like build build systems in each other, um, to hunker down for the next 3 years, maybe more, because
Mhm.
this may be a once in a lifetime administration, or it may be the first of many. So we have to start preparing to build systems outside of government that can support communities.
So that sounds like a great place to actually end, unless you have any last thought or action plan you want to share with us.
Um, no, just keep learning. That's all we can do, and keep loving on your communities. That's all we can do.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this evening.